So morning, everybody. So I'm Arthaketu, if you don't know me. Yeah, just as a matter of interest, how many of you are in the WhatsApp group, the BTB Info WhatsApp group? Just put your hands up. Oh, quite a few of you. Yeah, so in that group, I kind of gave you something to do, and by the look of it, some of you have done it, which is, I said, to kind of get prepared a bit for the talk that I'm going to give today, to wear your favourite colour, or something that's bright. Yeah, and I suppose it's like you kind of put these things out, or this morning I said, or wear something that's significant, yeah, for you. And my sense is, like, you put these things out and you kind of think, probably not, people are not going to do that. But actually, it looks like quite a few of you have, actually. So the surround room is a little bit brighter for it today, as in it's not just a lot of black and white and then an occasional bit of colour. There's quite a bit more colour in the surround room. So the talk that, well, no, actually, maybe before I say that, I thought what I want to do today is I want to give this talk. I'll tell you what the title is in a minute. But I thought I would also say where the sources of inspiration have come from. So I haven't read all of these books this week, but I've kind of been dipping into one or two of them. But they're all very good in relationship to what I'm going to talk about. So this is a bit of a book plug. So this book has just been reprinted. This was the original, a bit thinner. And it's called Meeting the Buddhas. It's a fantastic book. And then there was a series of talks given by Sangharakshita, which became this book, which is Creative Symbols of the Tantric Path. And this is what I've been really going into this week. Just the introduction. The introduction is absolutely amazing. And then there's this book, which is Guide to the Buddhist Path, which, again, is fantastic, actually, for an introduction. And it's also got loads of lovely illustrations by Aloka kind of in it. The graphic design isn't fantastic, but actually the book itself is, and the illustrations are amazing. So that gives you an idea of, if you're interested in what I talk about today, it gives you an idea of where you can follow up what I'm going to say. So the title of the talk is An Image of Enlightenment Entering the Mandala of the Five Buddhas. An image of enlightenment entering the mandala of the five Buddhas. And what has been kind of occurring to me over the past couple of days is this, and it was very strong when we was meditating together. So, well, this is the mandala, yeah? This is the mandala, and in the center of the mandala is a Buddha. So the mandala is like, on one level, the Buddha, it's a bit like you're looking at the Buddha like that, as if you're kind of seeing him or her. And then the actual mandala is a little bit like an architectural drawing. So it's kind of like looking at it from above. Yeah, and you see the structure of it. So what is it? What are these two things? The Buddha and the mandala. And what was really coming to mind kind of over the past couple of days is who is in the center is you. You're in the center of the mandala. And this is your environment. Actually, you live in a palace. But you don't know that yet. You haven't recognized that. You don't realize that yet. What also was interesting for me is I was thinking about the centre of the wheel of life. So the centre of the wheel of life has got the cockerel, the snake and the pig. So it's got these three animals which are related to greed, hatred and delusion. So you could say when those poisons, that's what they're called, are transformed, they're at the centre of the wheel of life, they're what keep the wheel of life turning around. When they're transformed, then you are at the centre of the mandala. You are the Buddha. And kind of following on from the talk from last week with Arya Bandhu said, everybody has the potential to awaken. So, well, that is true. So every single one of you here and every single being could be, at some point, at the centre of the mandala, could become the Buddha. And what's more is that when you awaken, you're not kind of like singular. It's a bit like just like our psyche. You're very multi-dimensional. So if somebody came to visit you in your palace, they could enter through one of, well, maybe there's 5 doors, but you can see the doors here, here, and here, and here, and here. So they come to visit you, and maybe if they come through this door, they experience you in a particular way. You're manifesting a particular thing. If they come through this door, you're manifesting something else. If you're coming through this door, they see you as something else. Yeah. So actually, it doesn't show you on this image. But if this was an image of the 5 Buddha mandala, you would have 5 Buddhas kind of within this image. But the main point, in a way, I was kind of thinking, that is the talk, actually. The talk is just what I've just said. You are at the centre of the mandala. But you haven't realised it yet. This is what you can become when you practice. That is guaranteed, actually. And it's very beautiful. It's like kind of, I suppose the other thing I was thinking is like, well, how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world is completely an act of imagination. It's like we've got our conditioning, and we've got kind of like what's happened to us, and we've kind of defined ourselves in a particular way. We've imagined ourselves into a particular shape in relationship to all kinds of things that have happened to us. But we can imagine ourselves differently. We can reimagine ourselves. And we can reimagine ourselves in a way which is more in line with reality than our small version of ourselves. So this is what the image is getting at, that to enter the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, to become that, you're imagining yourself differently. And where this where this kind of fits in historically, this kind of image, is Buddhism went through 3 great phases. Yeah, it went through the phase of what's called, well, it could be called early Buddhism, so the time maybe 500 years after the Buddha passed into parinirvana, what's sometimes called the Hinayana. And then it went through another phase, another roughly 500 years, which was called the Mahayana. And then it went through another phase, which was called the Vajrayana. And Sangharakshita says that he gives 3 words for these phases of Buddhism, which I think are very evocative in a way. He says the first phase, the Hinayana, the word that's related to the Hinayana is renunciation. And the image, you could say, that's central is the image of the monk or the image of the nun. The word which is related to the Mahayana is altruism, so going beyond yourself. And the image or person that's related to the Mahayana is the Bodhisattva, the being who's bent on the enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So the motivation is very other regarding. And then the third phase, this phase of the Vajrayana, the Vajra means diamond thunderbolt, so it could be translated as the diamond way. The word that he uses in relationship to the Vajrayana is transformation. So I might come back to to that later, but in a way I've already said something of what that means. It means transforming the poisons into something else. So the image comes from the Vajrayana. It comes from this point in Buddhism, which is related to what's called the Buddhist Tantra. This particular phase of Buddhism. And this particular phase of Buddhism, what it's concerned with, it's probably concerned with a few things, but it's concerned with direct experience, unmediated through concepts. So Sangharakshita says that you cannot get at, well, we've probably heard this quite a lot of times, you can't get at enlightenment through concepts. You've got to let go of concepts. So how are we going to get any kind of sense of enlightenment? And he says the way, one way, obviously you can reflect on the Dharma, which is you are working with concepts. But a way which is very, well, strongly transformational is to work with images, symbols, archetypes. And this is what the Vajrayana really works with. So, for instance, the Vajra is a symbol from the Vajrayana, or the Purba, the demon dagger, is a symbol from the Vajrayana. The Vajra chopper is a symbol from the Vajrayana. So to enter the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, what we need to utilize is our imagination. And some of you have heard me say this before, but we're imagining all of the time. Yeah, we imagine ourselves in dependence on causes and conditions. We imagine ourselves into all kinds of kind of shapes and forms. Sometimes we feel amazing. We feel like a kind of superstar. Sometimes we feel like we're completely nothing and worthless. Sometimes we feel like we're really successful. Sometimes we're unsuccessful. Sometimes we have an image of ourselves where there's a sense of we're beautiful, and sometimes we imagine ourselves as ugly. It's kind of like all of these ways in which we imagine kind of ourselves. There's loads and loads and loads of them. But like I say, we can reimagine ourselves. We can imagine ourselves as something different. And the imagination that I'm talking about in relationship to what we need to use to get some sense of this image of enlightenment is not just your everyday distracted mind, like kind of fantasizing about something or going shopping or chatting to someone. All of these things are going through the imagination, through the mind. That is interesting, but what I'm talking about is, it's like a kind of, you could say, a higher level of the imagination. And it comes about when we are more whole. So when our rational mind and our emotions and our intuition are really working together, then the imagination takes off. So it's related to integration. And in terms of our system of practice, well, we start with integration or mindfulness, then positive emotion, metabhavana, and then there's this stage of spiritual death, insight, and then there's this stage of spiritual rebirth. The stage of spiritual rebirth in the system of practice, our particular system of practice in this tradition, there's another stage after that, is related to the imagination. Yeah, this is the word that Prakasha used to describe that phase. So Sangharakshita talks about, in the creative symbols of the Tantric path, he talks about symbols How does something become symbolic? What is a symbol? This is a symbol. And he says that you cannot define symbols. You can't reduce them to concepts. You need to become receptive to them. And he also says that what makes something symbolic is that it has that anything in a way has an aspect to it which is related to reality. It's he says that, so the term that's used in Buddhism is it's shunyata, it's empty, it's ungraspable, it's indefinable. This is what, when that starts to shine through something, then we get a sense of something as a symbol. And you could say the medium for approaching something becoming symbolic is the imagination. He also says that that in Buddhism there's a hierarchy of symbols. Yeah, and in a way you could say the top of the hierarchy is the Buddha or the Bodhisattva. Because this is the closest thing to our goal, the closest thing to awakening is that image. And then he says, but we've really got to be honest about how do we experience something. So he says that, so those of you that are more familiar with Buddhist symbols and images, well, you're probably all familiar with the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, but he says kind of like, we might have these images on our walls, we might even meditate on them, but they're not really symbols for us, not yet. And it made me think of, I was going to give a talk, I almost gave this talk here a while ago, and this talk, the title for this talk came to me when I was on retreat with Lolita Ratner. And the talk was, The Shrine is a Closed Door. That was the title of the talk, The Shrine is a Closed Door. What I mean by that is, when we sit and look at the image of the Buddha, sometimes we have no feeling for it. Yeah? Sometimes we come in the shrine room, we kind of go through the motions, maybe we bow, but we have no feeling for the image, really. It's not a symbol for us. The door is closed. But it can be a symbol for us. And Sangharakshita says when something becomes a symbol, if the Buddha was really a symbol for us, it would completely harness and rouse all of our energy. So that means that when you came into this shrine room and you saw this image of the Buddha, your life would completely change. All of your energy would be galvanized around that image. You would want to become what that image is pointing towards, awakening. And this is what we want to do. This is how we want to relate to the symbols of Buddhism. It can be done. Well, I'm a bit torn because I was saying in the team before that I kind of had this sense of like, do I stick with my notes or do I just let rip? This is a little bit more let rip, but I kind of there's a quote. I don't know whether it's going to fit or not, but I really like it. I really want to put it in, so I'm going to say it. I'm going to see whether it does fit or not. Well, let me have a look. If I can find it. Oh yeah. So Sangharakshita is talking about symbols and what the spiritual life is. So this is from Creative Symbols of the Tantric Path. He says, this is what the spiritual life is about, trying to find more significance in our daily lives. When you can do that, there is never a dull moment. This is the experience of mystics and meditators who speak of seeing literally everything as being lit up from within, glowing with light, significance, meaning, inner depth, symbolism. It all amounts to the same thing. In a certain state of mind, everything you see has significance. Not that the significance is reducible to conceptual meaning, it just is significant. So actually, the other thing that he says about symbols is something becomes a symbol, or in a way, the world, ourselves, everything, becomes symbolic, depending on our perception. So this is really important. So we meditate, our consciousness changes. We can get into higher states of consciousness. And when we get into higher states of consciousness, then we begin to experience the world, or our internal world, more symbolically. We see the deeper meaning of what's happening in our experience, whether that's the imagination, whether that's image, whether that's kind of anything. Again, that is possible. So, I'm finished for a little bit with talking. I'm not going to ask any questions at the minute. I kind of thought we'd do something else. So I'm going to lead you into something, and then we're going to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. So if you want to, you can get into your meditation postures. So just getting a sense of the kind of structure of the room, the kind of walls all around us, the space in the room. And what I want you to imagine is that in the very centre of the room, there's a huge sphere of white light. So right in the very centre of the room, there's a huge sphere of white light. So the white is like sunlight shining on snow. And then what I want you to imagine is that the light begins to radiate out. So it radiates out into the east, into the south, into the west, and into the north. And as it kind of goes into one of the directions, it kind of it refracts, it kind of becomes another colour. So as the white light shines into the east, it becomes blue light. Maybe you could even imagine a blue sphere of light in the east. as it shines into the south, it becomes yellow. So yellow light. And again, maybe you could imagine a sphere of yellow light in the south. And just staying in contact with your body, just getting a sense of how it is to imagine these colours. Then as the white light shines into the west, it becomes red light. So you could imagine a sphere of red light in the west. Colour red. Then as the light shines into the north, the white light becomes green. So green light. You can imagine a sphere of green light in the north. So white in the centre, blue in the east, yellow in the south, red in the west, and green in the north. And then just opening your eyes. What? Is it wonky? No. This is the east. This is the direction that you come in. Yeah. Sorry. So what I'm interested in. So a part of the reason why I wanted you to get you to wear different colours, wear your favourite colour, is because what I was interested in exploring is colour. Actually, it's the most basic way in which the mandala manifests. So we'll just start. Maybe I don't know how many colours we'll do. Maybe we'll do a couple. Anybody got a favourite colour?
Green.
Green. Okay, good. So what I want you to tell me is when you get a sense of green, what comes to mind?
Nature.
Nature. Yeah. Didn't know where that came from then. Oh yeah, sorry. Nature. Yeah. Healing. Yeah.
Growth and prosperity.
Growth and prosperity. Good.
I think in link with nature, beginnings, like new beginnings with spring.
Yeah. So it links with nature, new beginnings and spring.
And flourishing.
And flourishing.
Vitality.
Vitality. Yeah.
The northern lights.
The northern lights. Yep. Hmm.
Movement and life.
Movement and life. So maybe that will do for now. So the 5 Buddha mandala has 5 Buddhas in it. Yeah? Some of you know this. But each of the Buddhas has a colour. So there is a green Buddha. in the north. So in a sense, it's like, I think the thing that there's a couple of things that I've been finding really interesting recently. So one of them is, well, just colour itself, just looking. Oh, right, look, there's a yellow bus, and there's a woman in a yellow skirt, and there's a whatever. Maybe I'm looking at yellow or whatever. But it's like colour is evocative, isn't it? It already gives you some sense, maybe. Well, it's already, there's a connection. Yeah, you've connected growth, nature. What was the one that you said again, Toby? Vitality. Kind of all of these things, when you just have that sense of that colour, that's what comes to mind. So it's like if you imagined that particular Buddha, forgetting what the other associations are that you might have read about, it's like you've got this immediate sense for you, and this is important actually. This is what Sangharakshita says. He says that you've got to get a sense of what is a symbol for you. Yeah? What moves you? What have you got a feel for? That is your doorway. So that's your starting point. Sometimes when you overlay concepts on things and maybe you try and get something to fit, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So already you've got a way in. You've got a doorway, yeah, through the colour. So give me another colour. Where did that one come from? Red. Yeah, and you've got a lovely red top on. So red. Give me some associations with red. Fire. Well, wait a minute. So this is really interesting. That was quite different, wasn't it? With just saying that red, everything just went like kind of everybody wanted to say everything. And I didn't even hear it all. I heard fire, blood, and then there was two other things that a couple of people said. So what were the other two things? Energy. Pain. And pain. Okay. Maybe not so good to imagine pain and the Buddha, but there you go. Heart. Yeah. Well, maybe pain in the sense of pain being transformed, actually. But that's interesting though, isn't it? It's like you imagine red, the red Buddha, and suddenly energy, blood, life, heart. Can I give me a few more associations? Warmth. Passion. What was it? There was one that I missed. Sunset. Boldness. Yeah. So again, that's really interesting. So you want to be a bit more bold in your life. For you, the association with red is bold. You want to change your consciousness and yourself. You want to become strong. Wear a bit of red. Now, if that is your association, and this is kind of like I would say the territory of this whole area of kind of tantric Buddhism. It's like it's taking these things, and it's transforming. So we've had two colours. Maybe we go for another one. So another colour. So blue. Yeah. So associations with blue. Peace. Cool and depth. Ocean, sea. Infinity. Quiet. What was the other one? The sky. There's a lot there, isn't there? But again, interestingly, something changed, didn't it? Energetically, you could say something changed. We started to imagine the sea. We started to imagine depth, coolness in comparison to fire. Yeah, and actually, the other thing that is sometimes interesting, it doesn't always work this way, is this is what I find fascinating about this image, is that each of the Buddhas has a whole load of associations related to it. So one of them is colour, just one. They've also got an element, and yeah, it happens that Akshobhya or Lochana, the Buddha that is in this area, the element which is related to those two is water. The element that is in the centre is space. The element which is related to Amitabha and Pandravasani is fire. The element related to Ratnasambhava, so I'm telling you the names of the Buddhas, and Marmiki is earth. And the element related to Amoghasiddhi and Green Tara is air. Maybe we go for the last colour then. Well, not actually, it isn't the last colour, it's 5. We'll go for yellow. Unpleasant. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Desert, sun.
Deserts, sun.
Gold.
Sunflower.
I got 2 there. So what was it again?
Sunflower.
Sunflowers and
Gold.
gold. Sweet.
Energy.
Energy.
Radiance.
Radiance.
Bliss.
Bliss.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Trust.
Trust.
Beauty.
Beauty.
And richness.
And richness. So the Buddha that is related to yellow is Ratnasambhava. So his name means jewel born or jewel producing. He's rich. Marmiki holds a kind of, I can't remember what it is, a mongoose, which produces, this might sound really weird, it produces. All right, okay. Well, I'm getting mixed up then. Forget about that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, riches. So, remember what I said at the beginning? You have the possibility of being at the centre of the mandala, which means you have the possibility to manifest all of these qualities. Yeah. You might think of yourself as quite poor, and it's interesting what you said about I can't think of the word you used, but like the sense of dislike. That is also interesting, actually. Some colours we have aversion to. That's interesting. To stay with that sometimes. Maybe at the moment it isn't the colour for us, but maybe that does say something. What is it that we don't want? Yeah, what is it that we can't take in? Kind of at the moment. So this might be a bit intense. There's like so much stuff in here. You might be a bit bombarded. But what I said what I want to do is give you lots of doorways. Yeah. Now this is one of the set of doorways that I'm finding fascinating. So this is it. Unfortunately, I haven't got all of the right colour pens. So what is it? Okay. Greed. Hatred. Envy. This one will have to be in black. Pride. Ignorance. So I said that the Tantra is about transformation. So we probably all know these emotions, unfortunately. And maybe we've got our favourites. This is also jealousy. So we've got our favourites. So these emotions are doorways, yeah? These emotions can transform into something. We transform, these are what are known as the 5 poisons, not the 3 poisons. They transform into something, and they've got a relationship with the 5 Buddhas, and they've got a relationship with the 5 wisdoms. And I'm just going to tell you what the wisdoms are, but I can't say that I can explain them, to you. Maybe we might have a go at one. But what is interesting is, how do I do that? Well, anyway, I'll just write the things in. Discriminating wisdom, agreed. All accomplishing wisdom. Dharmadhatu, whatever that might mean. Mirror-like. Can't think what that one is. Oh, yeah. The wisdom of sameness. So sometimes the wisdom, it's probably worth reading about the wisdoms to get more of a sense of them. But sometimes you get a sense of the wisdom also in relationship to the whole lot of associations that are related to the figure. So I'll give you an example. Hatred. The figure that you could say transforms hatred in the 5 Buddha mandala is Akshobhya, and he holds the Vajra. And the Vajra is said, because the Vajra is diamond and it's thunderbolt, so it's destructive, but it destroys ignorance. What I found really fascinating recently is the sense of, I was reading some stuff which was saying that we've all got a relationship to a couple of the Buddhas. Yeah, we might not know that, but we have, like kind of when you start to read and when you start to reflect, it's like, oh right, I'm attracted to this, and I'm attracted to this, and I'm this kind of person. So hatred, the way I've heard it talked about is because of Akshobhya holds the Vajra, and the Vajra is the diamond, it's talked about as, well, sometimes it's very sharp. Yeah, it's very kind of penetrating. So this is what it's like, isn't it, when we're angry and hateful. We go in, yeah, very, very strongly with a sense of wanting to destroy. It's like we have got a sharpness to us. Sometimes we say things, sometimes we say our truth in that moment, the thing that we've been thinking about for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, comes out in that moment. And, well, there it is. This is what we really think. That is the truth of things for us at the moment. But what is really interesting for me is, Tanya will like this. So this is another way of looking at this image, yeah. So you look from this end and you see the wisdoms, and you look from this end and you see the poisons, but the poison can transform into the wisdom. So mirror-like wisdom. So that's quite evocative in itself, isn't it? It's kind of like completely objective, yeah? It's not distorted. When we're in a state of hate, generally what is happening is things are quite distorted. It's like we're not completely on point. Some of the things we say might have a truth to them, but also there might be a whole load of other stuff that's mixed in there. So I suppose the way I've heard it talked about more recently is that it's like we can't handle the wisdom. Like we can't handle reality as it is. So what the only thing we can handle is a very distorted form of it. And the distorted form is hatred. It's like that is what we can handle in our with our limited sense of self. But actually it's got a potential to transform into mirror-like wisdom. So again, this is fascinating for me. It's like anything that we're experiencing, negative emotions have got a potential to completely turn around and transform. Well, this is the work, really. This is what we need to do. That'll do, I think. Yeah. So, we've probably got about 5 minutes or so. So, maybe if there's any kind of questions or comments, we'll kind of see. No, later. Just 5 minutes. Just more 5 minutes. Yeah. What's
in the centre on the wisdom's bit? What's the Dharma Dhatu?
Dharma Dhatu? Well, it means something like the realm of the Dharma. I suppose it is like it's the purest form of wisdom. It's like kind of wisdom beyond words, wisdom beyond image. Emptiness would be another word for it. Unfathomableness, indefinable. You can't grasp at anything. There's completely no greed, hatred, and delusion. There's no poisons. So ignorance is what is shielding us from it. It's like, in the Wheel of Life, the images of a blind person. We're blind to the reality of things. But when we experience that wisdom, then we're not blind anymore. Yeah.
If it is impossible to grasp it,
Yeah.
then the only way to actually come near to it is for the Dharma, for this
Dharma
teachings
Dhatu.
to come to you. But for them to come to you, you must come closer to them. So it's like they won't come to you if you won't do anything to come to them. And only at the point of when you do the work, then you can slightly touch the wisdom. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you've got to do the work, haven't you? You've got to do the work in the sense of you've got to work out, and obviously through Buddhism, you've got all kinds of formulations that give you a sense of how do you look at yourself and how do you look at the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one simple example would be everything is impermanent. That would be a way of seeing that gives you a way through into this kind of wisdom. So yeah, of course you've got to do something. You've got to
come a little bit closer to
Yeah, it doesn't just come
Yes.
while you're sat on the couch watching TV. Well, maybe it does actually for some people, but
And you have a relation.
yeah.
So what I heard is that for something to be a symbol, it's got to be connected to shunyata, or shunyata has to be seen in it.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little bit? How come?
Could you repeat the question?
Can you say the question one more time?
What I heard you saying is that you've got to see or access shunyata in something for it to be a symbol for you.
Yeah. Maybe the best thing to do here, like I could say a little bit, but actually maybe the best thing to do is, if I can find it. Yeah. So this is what Sangharakshita says. He'll articulate it a lot better than me. So he's talking about the lotus as a symbol. So he says, when you see the lotus as a symbol, you are seeing it as being illuminated by some other higher dimension of reality. This reality is described in some Buddhist texts by the term shunyata, emptiness, which is a synonym for the unfathomable, indefinable mystery of the true nature of things. However, we cannot come at that mystery except through what is around us every day. As the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras put it, we cannot experience shunyata except through rupa form, referring to the objects we can perceive through the senses. A symbol is an object seen or felt or experienced as possessing a heightened significance that cannot be reduced to words or concepts. There is something there other than that form, that colour, or that sound, which is communicated through that form and inseparable from it. So that might not, I don't know whether that helps or not. It's like, in a way, you and I and all of us kind of would need to practice and reflect on what Sangharakshita is trying to say.
What I hear is sacredness, so that's what I hear.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good word for it, isn't it? Like kind of when you experience things in that way, everything becomes sacred. That would be a good way of putting it. So in that sense, it's like you would not want to harm yourself, you would not want to harm others, you would not want to harm the world. And actually, what you see within yourself is beauty, maybe. What you see as the potential in others is beauty. You see them as potential. And you see the world and environment as the conditions that will support that growth and awakening. So I suppose this, in a way, your word is very good, because this is what, and this is where I'll finish. This is how the Vajrayana sees things. It sees self and other through what they call like a sacred outlook. Yeah. But anyway, you could reflect on what Sangharakshita says, and yeah. But actually, maybe one thing that I will say. So, like I say, all of these Buddhas have so many associations with them. Yeah, you might not. Some of you, I imagine, will have connected with what I've said. Some of you might not have done. But what is interesting is to find what is of interest to you and follow that through. So that might be through a colour, it might be through an animal, it might be through an object, it might be through an element, it might be through the poison, it might be through the wisdom, kind of whatever it is. It's like kind of, if you find something that sparks interest, follow that. And in a way, you'll kind of, looking at some of the books that I mentioned, will give you a bit more of a sense of, who the Buddhas of the 5 Buddha mandala are, really. And remember that in the center of the mandala is you. And what surrounds the mandala is kind of yours, this palace. Yeah? Not you as you are at present, but you as you could become. That's it.